Hi, hello, and welcome to the Plone Newsroom. This is episode 23, recorded Saturday, August 1st, 2026. You're listening to Fred van Dijk from Rotterdam and Philip Bauer from Munich. So we've been quiet for a while, but again, we want to give you some update on the news of the world of Plone. Plone is a open source content management system written in Python and JavaScript and a couple of other languages, and has a great and huge community. Our podcast is video only usually, but you can also listen to audio if you want. We'll do some light screencasting, screen sharing, but you're going to miss out on that, which is not that horrible.
Yeah, Philip, we've been quiet for quite a while.
Yes.
But we're back, still from Rotterdam, still from Munich, and still seeing each other at sprints, seeing each other at the conf last year. But yeah, time flies. We can talk each other's ears off there. But life has been busy, at least for me, and I know from you as well, when we met each other in person, with projects, with live and personal. Had some impressive travel early this year again, but we'll talk about that later. So yeah, welcome back, and let's continue.
Yeah, let's at least we meet sometimes. We don't have to meet often or that frequently online. We meet at least a couple of times a year in person at sprints and conferences and stuff. But let's face it, it's not like people are sitting at home waiting for the next Plone Newsroom podcast to drop and having nothing to do. That's not the case. So while we're at it, let's get started. What has happened in the world of Plone lately? And by lately, we mean basically 26, mostly 26. The biggest thing, obviously, has been the release of Plone 6.2. That was in May 26. And as usual, we have a new version of the front end and a new version of the back end. Do you want to walk us through a couple of the changes in the front end?
Yeah, so as we have the Volto 19 is now included, and we used to have for a while we had this cadence of the uneven versions would be kind of experimental testing versions, and then the even version we had that quite a few times. But now Volto 19 is indeed the version that's included in 6.2. There's now a feature to restore unsaved content, so the front end keeps record of what you're doing if it suddenly gets aborted and you come back to that same context location URL. It's like, hey, I see something here in the browser storage. Weren't you working on that, and would you like to restore it?
That's super useful.
You can drop files straight into a folder. We have finally finalized. The technology was there already, I think, in 6.1 or 6.0 with the block types index, but we have a control panel now, also in the UI, in the control panel area for block types, where you can query how many blocks do I have and where are they exactly in use, which is very useful also for small upgrades or phasing out blocks, introducing new ones. For migrations, like are one of our favorite pastimes, Philip. Writing a migration code for a block that's only used on two places in your site. It's
like, well, I just used it like 2 weeks ago, and not for an upgrade step, but I just sent the client a list of pages where this specific block is used, which was not supported anymore because we did some changes, and they replaced it because a broken block can still be edited, like not the content obviously, but it can be removed. So that is, and it was only 5 items, so that was easy to, but it would have been super annoying to find there without a catalog or a
the catalog was there. Panel. The catalog was there,
yeah.
But the control panel is now also even for customers or advanced users. They can just check it themselves. Exactly. Another very, 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 very big one, but under the hood, like maybe literally or figuratively, you can run Plone sites under a subpath, which means you can kind of submount them under one single domain. The other one, I think we're still not there, or I need to check now, because we had two of these biggies. This was one that has been there for years, And correct me if I'm wrong, Wesley Barroso Lopez invested a lot of time in this. They needed this for some very large portals and setups in Brazil. But there were all these edge cases all the time. This is one of those base features where you think, oh, that's easy. We had this for a long time. But this proved to be very, very, very challenging under a kind of front and back end separated setup. Has been there, was in production for years, but it took also another, I think, 1 or 2 years to get this stabilized. That's now in Volto 19. The other one is still not there, what I just mentioned, which is like running Plone under different subdomains. If there's still something. If you also change the subdomain, or say I want to mount this part of Plone. You have one Plone backend main site, and you want to mount a subpath on another subdomain. There's still dragons there, but
I see. That will be that is required for subsites. If you have a subsite, which is basically a folder inside a Plone site that handles like its own Plone site, doesn't have its own user management, but if you click on the logo, for example, you stay within the subsite, the navigation is within the subsite, and you want to deploy that as, I don't know, mysubsite.mydomain.com instead of www, for example, there may be still issues there.
Yeah, so it also depends on what you call a subsite. For some people, a subsite is nice under one big portal, and indeed. But the second case, if you want to really present it as a separate domain, then the challenge is, of course, that one of the things I can imagine is that your navigation or your site route, where all kinds of things are nicely published, is of course gone when you're under a subsite. So interesting stuff. But like half of the, let's say, summarize, half of the problem is solved. Now let's see what we can do with the other half. Backend then. We have a lot of work, and I think this is a culmination of 2 years, 3 years,
Probably
3.5 years of work here. The Python backend now fully supports and is cleaned for native namespaces, which is an advancement in the Python programming language, which took a lot of work. And not only in the direct Plone code, but also in our whole CI/CD setup, all the scripts surrounding that, the whole release process scripts that were built. Not in the last, I think we've mentioned it, moving to native namespaces where you have a mix of packages with old and new stuff was also a huge challenge that I think Maurits and others solved 1.5 years ago. And then it was like, hey, now we're getting somewhere and we can move on, because that was at first a challenge. You couldn't even mix and match them. As you sometimes see where you go to a candy store and it was not like a pick and choose. Oh, I only like licorice, or I only like this. No, it was either or.
Yeah. The change to
the
change to native namespaces itself is actually not a big one. There's not a lot of code involved. You basically change your PyProject setup UI and remove a couple of lines in your dunder init files, and voila, there you are. But if you have to do that across 260 packages and have to take care of making it being able to run native and non-native namespaces at the same time, that was the main challenge here, and orchestrating that all for one release. Obviously, the packages that we rely on also have to do that, and they did that before us. The biggest one obviously being Zope. That's the main reason why we use Zope 6 now in Volto 6.2, in Plone 6.2, sorry. There haven't been many changes, but they also switched the whole Zope infrastructure ecosystem to native namespaces. Other than that, there's nothing really worth mentioning there.
Well, I think we forgot one in of course our secret huge outline that we prepare for every TPN. Python support. So we still support the native Python versions, and there is a lot of moving. I don't think we removed the global interpreter lock support yet. Wasn't that 3.13 or 3.14? But 3.14 is supported. Python 3.14 is supported now. There's a flag. I wouldn't enable it because we're not that far yet. Not for Zope and Plone. But yeah. don't underestimate this. For every release now, every the in itself great increased cadence of Python releases is also something we of course have to follow now, which also includes at least checking quite a bit of work. Some C extensions that need to be checked, and this is something like you mentioned, SOAP 6, and we take SOAP for granted too much there. But all this work is mainly done on the SOAP level, also with the C extensions, where I think we also had a recent call for some more help there, because the hands that now lift that work are not that many.
Yeah, we now support Python 3.14. We dropped support for older versions, so you can run a very recent Python version on the hood of your Plone instance, which is nice. Another thing that is often overlooked is REST API endpoints, because unless you actually use them in programming, you don't see them in the user interface, but there have been new endpoints added for export and import, and for the block types. Obviously, the block types was required for the catalog of block types, and other bug fixes. But the REST API is also still under development. The classic front end is, we have already talked about the Volto 19, which has seen these really nice improvements. ClassicUI mostly has seen bug fixes, and bigger changes were in 6.1, like the new related items widget. For 6.2, there's not that much except for a huge ton of bug fixes. And for the next version, there's going to be a couple of bigger changes that we're going to get into later.
Yeah. Not to say that the Volto 91 hasn't had a huge list of bug fixes as well, as well as improvements included with the features. But yeah, a lot of works on both front ends, a lot of work in both back ends, a lot of catching up with the Joneses or the neighbors, how you can call it, for the ecosystem that we work in. So that's Plone 6.2 landed spring 26, just before our summer, depending on if you do the calendar or the meteorological one. We were still in front of that.
Exactly. We had some security issues also this year. So there was a Plone security fix with the obvious number 2026-06-23, which is the date when that was released, which we're not going to get into detail, but obviously there were security issues, and these ones and earlier ones were fixed in a bug fix release, Plone 6.2.1, which includes all the patched packages. We have not yet seen a deluge of security reports that are AI generated. Maybe because Plone is not that big of a target, or there's no one to extort. I'm not sure. Or we're just so secure. I don't want to jinx that.
Let's blame it on all six.
Yeah, let's blame it on all of that. There's been other changes. What we changed is names this time. Naming, cache invalidation, and something else are the hardest things.
Yeah, off by six errors. So indeed, let's introduce this one, or we can first talk about the names and then why. But I know also I was informed of the why. So let's start with this one first. When development started on the successor of the Volto front end, we are not too fond of Revolution, so it's mostly Evolution. We have this nice code base, which is version supported, so we created a branch. The branch needed a name, so what shall we do? 7, branch 7. So we did that.
Because the targeted backend is version Plone 7.
Yeah, so 7 became a kind of an internal name, but it was also the branch. It was the branch of Plone /Volto on GitHub, and Volto is the repository. So we had Volto, name Volto branch 7. Where all the other
7 actually not as a number, but
SEVEN.
Yeah,
Yes,
so that was
sorry, that's
the
the
secret code name.
Yeah, and then of course in those, we're now 2.5 years in already, I think, since the first planning and first experiments and other things. There were so many changes that it was like, hey, we're never going to merge this branch back into the main branch, which is Volto, and the other branches, of course, were like the 16x release, 17x release, 18x release 9. So we're never there will not be that we're going to rename 7 to 20.x or 22.x. And then it was like, but then we need a new repository. And then are we going to name that repositories then easily 7 with 7? Well, you just noticed the problem with having a version number as the code name of the code. It was like we need a new internal name for this thing. We only did this once before, I think, when I look back for such a large component. I mean, we had to invent. We have been inventing names for 20 years. Archetypes, dexterity, or either something. It's even something started smaller, and somebody invented Kupu, or I don't know where that came from. We imported names, but sometimes you need at least internal code names for a while to refer to stuff. So that was like, hey, we need to come up something, and I think it was around or before Beethoven sprint was somebody, and we will not blame him. Let's make a competition out of this. And he did it again at another sprint. So Beethoven sprint, we had a nice competition. I think there's some pictures maybe at the sprint report as well on Plone.org. Sticky notes on the wall. Everybody could, yes, and with a lot of with a little bit of banter and an expert on intellectual property and naming things and trademarks in our community, scanning and pre-selecting and raising a hand like, this one might get tricky, so don't do this. So it was not only fun and giggles. We did do some online live checking.
Due diligence, obviously, for naming.
And this is how
required.
Yes, and this is how the new name came. Philip, honor for you. I've been talking for 2 minutes now.
It's Aurora. So the Volto rewrite, which will be the React-based front end for Plone 7, is going to be called Aurora.
Internally, for the time being, while we're still developing on it for quite a while still.
Exactly. Yep. So that's about the roadmap. We're going to talk about that later, probably. It is actually mostly a rewrite of a lot of the internal technologies in Volto. Let's not go into too much React details there. There should be a special episode about that at some point. But that's the name that we're calling it. So at some point, you're going to get Plone with the option to use either the front-end Aurora, which is now the front-end option, the React-based front-end option Volto, or the front-end option. And now we're going to the next topic, because we realize that we have a backend, and we have two different front ends. Well, the backend being Plone and the REST API and everything that it does. And the front end was Volto, and the new version will be Aurora, unless we come up with a new name once before we release it. So we decided to rename ClassicUI because it had some negative implications. Like something classic is something old, is not going to be maintained a lot longer. Clients always ask the questions, when again are you going to phase out classic? Because it is the classics. We're not keeping the classics. We're abandoning the classics. And the Plone community in its infinite wisdom decided to A, not abandon classic, and B, rename it so that we actually have two absolutely valid front ends that are options for the foreseeable future. And the name we came up with, and now I'm gonna let you do the honors.
So again, the guy suggesting, hey, let's do a naming competition, also visited the next sprint after that, the Bush's Young sprint, and they're the same. I think. Well, you were there, I was not there, so I think the same kind of game was played, and there we had a clear winner called Blicca. if I pronounce it correctly.
Yes,
Blicca,
you do.
Blicca or Blicca?
It's spelled Blicca, and it, well, there's a lot to be told about that, but I'm not going to do that. Just two things. It is the name of a fish, same as Soap is the name of a fish, or Blue Bream is the same of name of a fish in the same family. And Blicca is one of the fish. I'm not a fish expert. I eat them and I look at them, but don't ask me how that fish is called.
I'm living 25, 30 kilometers away from the North Sea, but I'm still, yes, I love my fish, but not an expert here either. Yeah, so we have two new internal names for two front ends. Just like we have an internal, not internal, but both also a name for an alternative backend, which is Nick, which we'll mention a bit later. But still, Philip, I understand your explanation of how we are using this. But like you all said, if we don't rename it again before Plone 7 is released, and I think that's with all the events that we're going to hopefully talk about in the remaining time for this episode on things that happened this year in the community, we do need to talk about this because we've had this Plone 6 release in 2022, where we said, hey, we have a new front end, which is now separated, which runs on React. We have a stable server-side rendered front end that we've been working on for 20 years, which is also still there and very good. But we cannot look into the future. If we now go back to 2021, 2022, with other major world events at the time, we didn't know. And I think the consensus then was, we'll just see. Plone 6 will be the new release. We have a new nice front end. Please try it. If you set up a new Plone site, we suggest you try at least and pick and see if the new front end works for you for many reasons. If you have a big site already running on Plone 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, please continue with that because you'll have a lot of features in there, a lot of customizations. So then just jumping over the ditch and see what happens is maybe not such a smart move for some really large Plone Plone setups. Yes, and now we're 4 years in. As we said, we work on evolution. We've experimented a lot. We've cleaned up a lot. There are also a number of not really big announced, but still very cool deviations also from Volto already. Again, just mentioning, for example, Hydra, which separates and tries to optimize Volto for some advanced use cases as well. We have a kind of separation of editing and content again, which reminds me a bit of that technology we had in Plone 4, Plone 5, Diazo. So we have some experimentation. We have a stable front end that has always been there. We have a new React-based front end that has established itself over the last 6 to 7 years now. And we're approaching Plone 7, but what will that be on a marketing and communication thing? And I think we have still a lot of work to do there. And the work will be discussion, will be asking around worldwide, how do we market this in the future? How do we do this? Because I've picked up some signals also on sprints this year, like, oh, and then there's another name. How am I going to sell this to my customers? And yes, they do have a point there. On the other hand, we're an open source community in the bones, and we've always been open development. We've not been Apple, where we say we developed something for 4 years. Apple has had thousands of code names, for example, that leaked out. And I was like, oh, and then when the real release came, then it was like, ta-da, you have a product. And it's final, it's finished, and we're going to sell it. And Plone has always been transparent, and we've always been also transparent on our internal code names, where we need to think about this. I mean, Volto was, I think, the first. Like I said, Volto was the first big one where half of the CMS was got a code name, and you could switch it around. I've run Plone 4 sites with Dexterity for years before Dexterity became an integral part of Plone 5.
Same.
And after that, we never mentioned Dexterity. anymore. Well, maybe we did because of migrations, of course, and then you still refer to archetypes and dexterity and migration differences there. With Volto in 2019, 2020, somewhere Volto was picked as an internal code name. And then Volto also became the name of the finalized front end. And we started like, okay, but what's Plone 6? So you cannot really predict if an internal code name is going to live. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it's only used for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. They sometimes they take on a life of their own. There's like, if you remember, the themes had their names. There's Pastanaga, which is the theme of the Volto front end. There's Barceloneta, which is the current theme of the classic front end. There was, I don't know, other names. Something Sunburst.
Sunburst indeed. Before that, we had Deco, but Deco was more like the design of a block-based.
Yeah, that's a technology. So we have some names that sometimes make it into the marketing story, and sometimes they're not. But I don't worry too much about the name of Blicca and Aurora, because these are just it's a very important decision for a client that he does with his developer, which front end they're going to use. And in some cases, it's an open discussion. And in most cases, it's shut and closed before that because of the type of project that it is. Some of the clients even have their own, like, we want Volto, or we need a classic site. And but if that's going to be confusing or it's going to live on, I think only the future will tell. It is important that we not send the signal that the classic front end, the server-side rendered front end, Blicca, is going to be outdated at some point, because we had this discussion at Buschenschrank Sprint and about. There was like a lot of worry that if we support 2 different front ends, is that not going to split attention, developer attention? And when we looked at the numbers of people and hours actually being worked on the front ends, it's not like half of the front end developers moved from one front end to the other. It's now we have like 2 front-end developer teams, and so the number has basically doubled. That's at least the numbers as we looked at that at the Buschenschrank Sprint, and we had a very clear consensus that the future is gonna be at least for the foreseeable time for the both of them going to be stable. Let's see how Nick takes off, which is a backend, or how Hydra, which is like talking about negative naming. You remember the harsh discussions we had about Guillotina? Hydra. I can see people getting angry about that name.
If you love revolutionary history, or if you love advanced Dungeons and Dragons, I can pick a book here where I can give you the stats of the 2 or the 800 Hydra that you can meet in a dungeon while doing some tabletop role playing. But Philip, to also reflect a little bit on this, it's history repeating, and we're out of NS1 now, because the exact same thing that we had 4 years ago with a new front end, you will see the same split now in the next 2 to 3 years with Volto, because Volto will go to Aurora, whatever we name it,
and
then we have the same name split. We have the same maybe community split or split again, where you have people, hey, we have an established site on Volto, let's stick on Volto for a few more years. Or you say, hey, we start a project right now. Now Aurora based technology is interesting, where again, a lot of the technology, and not only talking for the front, it's all React based, and we can talk a little bit about that later. But still, Aurora is still React components, and if you need the technical things, you can move stuff around by wrappers by saying, hey, some old thing from or an old thing existing component, custom component that's running in a Volto based site. With a little bit of wrapping and adapting, you can also run it in an Aurora-based site, because Aurora will still be JavaScript front end, React component library, And then with a lot of advancements like the bundler, the router, React router, for example, the state management, which will be updated likely. And those are those 4 or 5 or 6 things that were discussed at a sprint 2 years ago. Was like, okay, where are we now in 5, 6 years of a front-end development? Where do you already see that, oh, these may be end of life or are mature, or hey, what are the new, cool kids working on right now in new bundler or new front-end technology, and we pick those things up, and 5 or 6 of those things are which is going to be replaced. But I'd say, like the biblical saying, don't do to others what you don't want to do upon yourself. We'll have this split again and again and again, where you have a setup, an established system, you do something new, and somewhere you need to make a cut where who is going to use the new stuff is a kind of incubation period first.
Yeah.
And then a kind of move over, and then you will have a kind of, and somewhere you'll have sometime you'll have some sunsetting.
Definitely. And I don't worry about that at all. There's going to be early adopters of Aurora that are running now. There are projects running on Aurora, even though you basically can't do content management like what we're doing. Let's say it's a content management system, but in Aurora, at least a couple of weeks ago, you couldn't do content management. Let's see how far it is now. But for other projects, it is an absolutely feasible technology and interesting as well. Let's move on from there.
Yes,
okay, one more word. But there's like there's like these small changes that are okay. People pick it up, and it will become something. Like, for example, a Diazo was an add-on. Few people used it, and it started being picked up. And the default theme at some point started using Diazo, and it was the big thing. Now it's going down, I would say. And other things are. They are flipped as this is going to be the new default for X, Y, and Z. For example, the folder contents view is going to switch from whatever it is now, the structure pattern to the file manager pattern at some point, and that will be in the next Plone version at some point, and everybody's going to use that. There's not going to be a huge early adopter, late adopters, and so because it's an integral part of Plone itself, and that was a nice injection here, because that is another thing that happened so we were talking now about names and about Plone 6.2 and what happened there in the add-on or feature sphere of Plone. Something interesting has happened with the ascent of LLMs.
I was just going. Sorry, now I'm going to interrupt you. I was like, we have kept the elephant in the room of what happened last year or last 6 months for halfway our timing, which is indeed AI, LLMs, and other things.
Obviously.
Continue.
Let's pick two things that actually yielded a result that is visible and
sorry. Let's first close off the whole naming thing, because I think you said last words. I want to up you more there because you mentioned Diazo. Diazo is like a code name, but there were 2 code names before Diazo doing the same thing, because before we settled on Diazo, we first had XDV, then we named it Deliverance.
Now, Deliverance was a Python implementation of the same technology, whereas Diazo uses XSLT and not a Python implementation.
Okay, but it's still
talk to Paul Everett about that.
But let's wrap up the naming thing now.
Deliverance actually, because you use Python hooks and modify your HTML in there. It's not faster.
It's not faster. But let's wrap up the naming thing, and indeed let's go to the next one. Indeed, looking back at events and other things, we get influenced by upstream, by an ecosystem, by programming languages. But AI was the thing.
Obviously, we're picking 2 things that have basically were dumped on our desks. Number one is something that Jens Klein developed. It's called Cloud Brine. It's the core, it is a serializer for data that Plone usually stores in ZODB as Python pickles as JSON. Like the REST API, it serializes data as JSON, but not for use for the front end, but for, in this case, for use in the database. So it is a alternative. That's one of the main features of it. Alternative way to store your data in a database. And in this case, it's no longer an RHEL storage or ZODB that stores Python pickles, which is Python serialized objects, but JSON serialized objects in a Postgres database. Using a bjson serializer, anti-serializer. And that is super interesting because this is not obscure at that point, because Postgres doesn't store a pickle that is serialized, but actually the data of the object itself. So you can query the Postgres database like you would query the Plone database, the Plone running Plone instance, and you don't need to have Plone running to do that. So suddenly Plone gets how do you say, opaque or translucent for people with a database mind. And Jens is certainly one of these people, and he developed with the help of Claude AI this very immense stack of tools that replaces the database with Postgres, and also the catalog with Postgres. So you're not querying the catalog, which is, let's not go into too much detail, which is B trees in the ZODB, whatever, in Plone, but you do actual Postgres queries against the Postgres database, which yields a lot of benefits. For example, you can dump your Solar because Postgres has all these features built in that you can use. And so it's a huge ecosystem that you can, it's like 6 packages. So it's an ecosystem that is intended for larger sites with huge speed benefits for that. You can drop the database size shrinks enormously because you don't need a catalog anymore, because Postgres is the catalog. And so
whoa, Philip, I'm going to break you now in a few sentences. Wrap up.
We're not going to go into too much technical detail. The point here being, this is all written by AI. And Jens told me he didn't read all the code that his system produced. I'm using it in a project, and it's I'm pretty happy with it, actually. But it's like one person developed a stack that people thought as in the past that is not doable. That's like, at least for a one-person team, that's an unachievable goal. It would be interesting to have, would be nice. I remember having discussions like 10 years ago about why not replace the catalog with something else. I was like, this is too tough and it's too hard. And with the help of AI, this actually happened in this case. And I'm equally amazed, excited, and afraid.
Yeah. So let's go. I remember, as you see that in movie, the AA, we had a kind of AA meeting with a large circle. I remember in Bristol, where this was half an hour subject, the catalog. The catalog. This was 2014, 2013. Reflect on that, Philip. I understand what you all just said in the last 5 minutes about Cloudbrine, but I'd like to put a little bit of nuance here, because it's not a huge ecosystem or a rewrite. And the things you explained, let's try to make a summary of those, because I understand all of it because I've been there. But what happens indeed, we have SOAP. SOAP is an object database, which stores things as objects, and those objects get pickled in a binary format. Python has had to support a Python interpreter. If you start up the Python interpreter and you say, I define a new class with these and these things, and now I have 2 or 3 or 4 objects of those class, then you could, for example, say, and now pickle those things that you have in your interpreter memory, store them on disk, and when I get back and I launch my Python interpreter, I can load them again from disk. And that was pickling and unpickling, like
which only works with the same Python version.
Which only works with the
and
same Python
your code
version.
Needs to be there.
And the code needs
the
to
class.
be there, and the classic too. But we've been building on this for 20 years, and this is where a lot of advanced, because you abstract away a lot of things, but you have to keep it, like you said, in the Python language. So what happened is we did this for years with our own, with the first database for Zope, which is the ZODB, which stored these things on disk, pickled in a kind of write append huge file, which was the data FS. Then we improved on those, like relational databases improved, and say, look, but those binary large objects that we need to store, please do this separate. That's how we got the blob storage. Then we moved further and we were like, hey, this is nice, but we have our own custom data storage layer, which works, but doesn't get a little complex if you want to really scale and fan out in a huge system. And we have all those nice relational databases that are able to have multiple masters and what do we call it again? That's the
primary and secondary.
Primary and secondaries, with a lot of secondaries. So we had this rel storage layer replacing, and then we could hook in relational databases. But like you explained, we still had this hard cut where we say everything on the object database level gets like compressed and pickled, and then stored on the layer below. And if you look at the schema for rel storage, I had to do this very recently for some database optimization things. There's a really hard cut there where the database layer doesn't really know about all the cool stuff which is on the CMS level. And this was one of the, if you look at Plone, one of the unique selling points, but also one of the big drawbacks, where if you look at a lot of other competing and other CMS implementations, they have this, they build the logical layer, the content types, the catalogs, the search things, they all have this transparent in the relational area. And this is where indeed Cloudbrine now, I was so amazed when I saw it as well, because it's really, there's a huge, like I said, there can be some huge advantages, speed increasements, not having, using the catalog on the lowest layer and not having a catalog in the business logic, because that's basically the current mature setup that we have at ZDB, where a lot of the business logic and the catalogs and the speeds and the things are on the business layer, on the business rules application level layer, and not in the database layer. So those get all pushed down now. You do have to realize that if we really go this path, then we will hook deeply into PostgreSQL, and we can make it transparent, but that also the kind of concerns of separation is also lost. Because then you will need the index on Postgres, and we will need to know and optimize the stuff on the Postgres level to get the advancements in the rest of the stack.
Obviously, you also, the downside is obviously that you have a network layer in between, because with ZODB you can live in memory, and you have like the application, all the catalog is in memory in your ZODB, while the application is running, doesn't have to talk to a different service. With Postgres, you have to. That's why the benefit is mostly for large sites. So if you have less than 1 million objects in your database, it's unlikely that you're going to see a huge speed increase with your sites, because if everything is in memory, it's just like this, without talking to a network.
But
we should at some point show a project that actually uses it. There's also some nice feature patches stuff, and you have the portal catalog tool has a different user interface. You can use all that stuff, and we can look at performance changes. It is really interesting. But the main point here is that was like why we picked it. This was done with AI, and the second thing that was done with AI is not like Jens spent a couple of weeks on that. That was really a lot of work, I guess, altogether, and he did that tons of iteration, and he knows what he's doing. So that's not like, okay, give me a new database layer with Postgres, and that's your prompt. That's not going to cut it, obviously. The other thing that happened was that at the Buschenschank sprint, Mike Verstappen and Peter Mattis got together, and again we had the discussion about the structure pattern, which is folder contents in ClassicUI or in Blicca. That this is so dated and needs to be updated. It still uses underscore and backbone and whatnot, JavaScript libraries that you don't want to talk about. And they actually, with the help of AI again, they did a complete rewrite called Pad File Manager. It's a pattern. The other is also a pad structure, now Pad File Manager. It is written in Svelte, as far as I know. I actually have not looked at that much at the code, but at the result. And within 2 days, they had a working prototype. And within 3 days, they basically had a fully functional 100% feature complete thing, which is not correct because there are a couple of small things that are still missing, like some translations are getting lost and some customization options are not there. But it is much faster. It is super modern stack. It is fully tested. You can dump not only items inside the folder, inside the folder structure, you can dump them into folders in the folder structure, and you can dump folders into folders, and you can move stuff around like in a file system, like in your Finder on macOS, for example, which is really nice for editors to move stuff around. It's much more intuitive now. So also AI-driven, huge feature that gives Plone a huge benefit, and this is certainly going to be the default folder contents implementation for a new Plone version. I'm not going to say that's going to be in 6.3 or in 7, depending on what we're going to put in 6.3. But this both projects are impressive because a small team implemented a very complex feature that bring actual benefit to the Plone community and Plone users in a very, very short time. And that raises a ton of questions about what that means for how we should earn a living in the future, what the job of a developer is in the future, and what the feature set of Plone will be in the future. Because if people with the right background can come up with an architecture, explain it, and iterate with the AI through it, and get to a result in a time where you think, okay, this is going to take a year or a team of 6 people for a couple of months, and now they're going to yield impressive results with a very short time span. I don't know what we should do in the future as developers.
No. Philip, now I'm going to cut you off. Let's talk about what we shall do in the next 13 to 14 minutes left, because our poor readers, we've been chatting about AI for since it started, of course, as also technical community at sprints and things. And also my personal journey has been from first amazement, trying to use it a bit as a sparring partner in the technical chats, then the first agentic stuff, then getting a lot of disappointment where, I mean, it's just like with when you assist a junior colleague, or he assists you, or with others, and or new people come into a team and you kind of assess them a little bit, like, hey, what can you do? What can't you do? And this is also how I approached AI. And I was amazed and I was disappointed a few times, where it can figure out the smartest things. But if you tell an AI, and I had this last week where I say, look, whatever you do on this document, keep my tone of voice and don't start rewriting complete paragraphs. It does it fine for 2 chapters. I said, do the rest. And I look at back the other day and it started rewriting my stuff.
But if you look at the past, like last year, if you would have asked the same question, it would have not worked for 2 chapters, but maybe 2 sentences, and then it would have
yes,
gone
indeed.
up.
That's true.
Things are changing and progressing at a rate that it's really hard to keep up with.
No, you read my mind, because I
got a question. So what should we, if we see what we can yield, results we can yield, shouldn't we as a community get together for sprints and say, okay, we have these tedious tasks that will take a lot of time but yield interesting results and good results. One example, Block model
No,
3.
you just had a question.
Should we do that? Should we at the next sprint or at the conference say, okay, migrate all the blocks to block model 3. Please not delegate that to a couple of developers. Two people should get together, say, okay, should do that, and do that all with the AI. And so we benefit from block model 3 for all existing blocks, including third-party blocks, like add-ons. It should be done in a couple of, iterations, couple of days, instead of months of work.
So I think we should cut the subject now and try to wrap it up and just do 2 or 3 blocks of it in next TPNs, which I really get a lot of energy now because there are so many subjects that we skipped. So I will go back because we talked about it a little bit. I think the main, and I've read this, this is not my stuff, I've read this also for a lot of blogs and things I ingested the last 6 to 12 months. What AI can speed up a lot is development. It can speed up a lot, like conceptualizations of new things, of verifying things, of doing. You see people, now this is really interesting. You see people that have been developing for 10 to 20 years and said, look, I never want to be a manager. I want to develop. I want to touch the code. And those same people are now praising and working their asses off to create harnesses to let agentic agents run, and they try to give the agents the best surrounding that they can with the best models and enough things, and they need to isolate them. They need to check all the things that those agents have done, or they're even they're setting up other agents to check their agents to see if they validated the work and and I'm like, hey, you've become a manager. The exact thing that you didn't want to do and said you'd never do, you're actually managing a whole herd of agents now and other things. And this is but come back to the point here, and then please, we should continue.
Yeah.
What I find very interesting here is that AI now really speeds up development, it speeds up conceptualization, but what it cannot replace, or it can also improve a little bit of communication, but it cannot replace communication, and it cannot replace reaching consensus.
Yes.
And those are exactly the things that we've been doing at sprints, we've been doing at conferences, and where I see and then I'll put my black hat, which I fetch now from somewhere, and put on my black hat. This is where we really have to watch out that some really smart people can do, and who know their problem domain very well, because they've been working on the things for 15 or 20 years. Because taking back Jen's example of Cloud Brian, when he first showed that, I sent him, look, I've been questioning myself. I'm not a developer who has been into cool things, but I was already wondering, what if a developer who knows his things because he or she has been working on something for 10 years, then uses AI to improve something big that he couldn't take on alone, but he knows the subject, so he can verify that what AI has done is fine. But this verification is still with 1 or 2 or 3 people that are experts. What we've seen in the Plone community again and again is that we have many groups of experts, and it takes quite a bit of communication and sprints to settle on the new direction. What I really think one of the big dangers here is that we also had this kind of duocracy thing and scratch your own itch. What we have to watch out for now is that if we have a few groups of people that scratch their itches and use AI to advance something really fast, is that we don't lose the connection to all the other setups that we've had so far that still use the mature existing thing that have to be migrated, where we fragment the community not only on 2 major front ends or 2 major back ends, where we say, look, we can live happily together with an alternative, but where suddenly within 2 or 3 years we have 10 different back end storage layers that are equally well, but are maintained by 2 or 3 people with their AI setups. And then those people move on. And this is where I'm like, so.
I totally get you. That's why I picked the example of block model 3, because this is a no-brainer. Everybody loves block model 3. They want it in all the blocks. Everybody hates the structure pattern, at least the developers hate it. And everybody would probably adopt the new one. But you're absolutely right when it comes to like architectural decisions of the thing itself or parts of the thing itself, where there's a variety of opinions. It is integral that we still keep communicating. Let's table the AI topic for now, because we will revisit like productivity increase. What does that mean for rates and competing for client projects and stuff in the future? But we're certainly not going to have answers for that.
Yeah. No, but don't get me wrong. I had some really amazing things done this year with AI that I would have never accomplished. I had this idea of things, and it experimented. I have prototypes lying around now, which is like history repeating. I have in my things, I have this project, I have this Raspberry Pi stuff I want to figure out, I have home automation, I have other things, but now I have like 10 folders on my my laptop with half AI experiments where like it's the prototype already and I can jump in again tomorrow, but I can jump into 50 other things tomorrow. So history repeating.
Obviously. And my colleague is doing amazing things. Let's next.
Yeah.
There's
no AI.
thing.
We will. No, we shall not. AI shall not be named for the remainder of this TPN recording.
Actually, in a couple of the next things that we're going to discuss, AI actually helped at some point, probably.
Yeah.
A small thing that is not that small, because it's for many, it's the first touching point with Plone, is Cookieplone, and there's been a lot of movement there. Cookieplone 2 is close to being released with the main thing is that the setup of a new Plone instance is going, the backend is going full in with UV. That means that the installation of Python and the packages that Plone requires is completely managed by UV, and the huge benefit is that it's much faster, especially even if you do changes, because before that change we still used UV pip install and not UV sync, for those who know what we're talking about. So the takeaway for those the people who know about that probably have used it and are benefiting from it. Those who don't know what we're talking about is installation is getting faster. It's getting more unified, especially when you use a Classic or Blicca project and a Volto project. It's now the same setup. It's just one has a Volto front end and the other does not. So the code and everything under the hood has been partly rewritten, and there's still a lot of work being put in, but I think we're going to see a release of the unified version next week. And but if you use a Volto project right now, you already get most of the benefits, and that is the main point, is that installation of Plone is getting more streamlined and easier and faster. And I think that's always a huge win, because that's like, if that is hard, Plone is hard. For the upcoming trainings at the Plone conference, if every training uses the same installation and they're all like streamlined and fast and predictable, that is a huge win.
Yes, so this is where indeed Cookieplone is. So we're talking now about Cookieplone 2.0. It's still not the final release. Cookieplone is actually two things. You have Cookieplone the engine, which is actually advanced and sophisticated, and I think it still now imports some stuff from Cookie Cutter, if people still remember that name. But we have Cookieplone. We have Cookieplone 2.0. We had this running joke a few years ago where we were not naming the Plone president, Philip, but let's name him now in a completely different situation, because this is our fellow Planista, Erico. Oh, okay, I have my window open because it's warm here and an engine just. So Erico Andrei has been putting a lot of effort on this in the last years, and also especially the last 12 months with Cookieplone 2.0, the engine, which was, if you read the changelog, it almost sounds like a rewrite. He's a fan of and really pushing also for the latest Python improvements, which are in there now. But we have like TUI, text user interface library, much improved used, input validations. You can, Cookie Cutter kind of supported this, but the wrapper cut it off. You can now save all your answers for a Plone project It's automatically saved, and you can also now really use it to pre-fill in all your answers for a next invocation of Cookieplone. So you can kind of automate Cookieplone invocations. And the real biggie one is subtemplates. which you can also register yourself or your company can register. So you could, for example, generate a new base project, but then in the end, hook in some of your own customizations for your own companies or for a customer, a large customer or integrator or a university themselves, to call sub-templates to override a few things for example, their specific CI setup or their specific deployment or their specific extra integrations with third-party systems for which you also have some setup in there. That's really cool in the engine. Yeah. And that's really cool. And those are also the which was very cool to see this year at sprints, where sprints are organized often by integrators, Plone companies, where those Plone companies were also like, hey, we want to use this internally. And you saw the activity at each sprint, also trying those sub-templates, where sprinters tested it on their own internal things. Hey, can we indeed merge this? So there was already, there was a lot of these things were already battle tested live by people coming to a sprint, seeing this new feature. Some already had experimented with it last year. I remember Mikael's presentation last year at the Conf, where he also did something, but then separate from Cookieplone. So this is a real cool event. And like you said, there's Cookieplone templates, which is also now 2.x with a lot of activity, with a unified project template now on a branch pull request, which hopefully gets merged soonish. We went all in with UV in those templates as well, the templates it generates. We had separate sublet templates now, for example, for the CI/CD for the DevOps.
Let's not get into too much detail there.
But it's cool. It's cool. If we talk about AI for 20 minutes on details, let's talk about this for 10 minutes.
The output is the outcome is the important thing, because most people don't want to mess with. I know there's a couple of companies who want to do that, have their not subclass but hook in Cookieplone, so all their setups have the same. But Cookieplone, and especially Cookieplone templates, is always moving because there's like small improvements that are changing, and so.
But a major 2.0 there is very shortly coming, and we will, I think, also see much more of that at the conference, where we indeed will use it for tradings.
Exactly.
To have a stable base. And this is like the thing, the best practices, like all those details we now mentioned, take a lot of work, and this is where the best practices comes in. You start up a new site, you can look at Cookieplone 2 if you have been out of Python, core Python or packaging improvements. You can look at the Cookieplone setup and see, aha, that's all changed. And what's even more brilliant, it actually works the first time you start it, because people have been sweating on this for 6 to 12 months to get it in this shape.
That is true. Let's move on. So on our secret spreadsheet, we have Plone 7, but I suggest we skip that because we don't know when Plone 7 is going to happen. The roadmap says it's going to be Q1 of next year, and I certainly doubt that. And B, we don't know what's going to be in there because, there's too much uncertainty. We're going to cover that in one of the next episodes, I guess. But there's another small thing that happened, which is actually not that small at all, because there is not only Plone as the backend for the Plone, the ecosystem and the community. Yes, there's actually two other backends. One is Guillotina, and the other is Nick, which is a JavaScript written backend, mostly driven by Rob Gittema.
So Rob Gittema loved to use Python, but he moved to JavaScript a long time ago in the front-end development. And then he looked back and he was like, hey, but what I am proficient now in the front-end, let's look at the back-end again. So he started a clean rewrite of the most essential things in the whole backend Plone SOAP stack in JavaScript. He internally codenamed that Nick. And Nick has become, I think, in the last few, I'm not talking about 1 year, this is like, he's been busy with this for 4 years, 5 years already. And we have a kind of stable, rather feature complete stable version now, which is a JavaScript re-implementation of many of the core backend features that the front end and Plone itself relies on. And indeed, at the pole position sprint, I sat next to Rob. I'm on the admin team, and we, after first, of course, some real good due diligence by other people in the Plone community, if we can move this. We finalized there the small technical things, and we moved Nick now under the umbrella of the Plone Foundation.
Yeah, welcome, Plone. Nick is named after the nearly headless Nick, because headless server, client, backend, front end, whatever. Yeah, in this case, it's just the backend. The front end that Nick uses is actually Volto. So, brr, a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff again. Yeah.
What
so Nick is
amazing
there. Nick is now officially under the Plone Foundation. We still, I think there's one edge case I still need to solve with the domain or something. But this is another very cool thing where we have alternatives for the backend. And like I said, this is a really cool evolution here, where indeed it was also started as a kind of revolution, a complete rewrite. But for the whole Plone community, I think this is a really cool new feature.
Evidently. Let's talk quickly about events. So there's things always happening, people getting together, and the most important thing, obviously, is the Plone conference. Happens once a year. This year it's going to be in Maastricht in end of September. The location, it says it's at the heart of Europe, but actually it's from Munich. It's quite a train ride. I have to change trains a couple of times, but still, it is at least it's well connected by plane and train. It's going to be still like late summer, so we can enjoy a really nice time in a very beautiful city. And as usually, it's going to be a full week. So Monday, Tuesday is going to be trainings. There's a ton of trainings. They're included in the conference price. So if you haven't clicked your ticket for the conference, do that now, and you get free trainings for 2 days by professionals such as my colleague Fred here, and
such as ourselves. Oh, this is like a shameless self-promotion. No,
we're
true. No, it's not. It's not. We've been active in the community for years. We've been doing trainings for years now. Yeah. So indeed, Philip will be doing a revamped. I really hope a revamped, and as yearly we try to update the running trainings to the latest knowledge and best practice and things. So you will do Mastering Plone.
Yeah,
still amazing. This started as a 5-day training, and we've managed to kind of condense it into the 2 days of available.
Well, actually, it still is a 5-day training. At the conference, we always give the abridged version.
The abridged version, and my colleague David Glick is going to assist you on that one. Yes. We will have content editing trainings on 2 different levels. One by Karel Kalitz from Juicy, Paul Roeland, and don't know the name. Kim Paulussen. I was not Kim Nguyen. Kim Kwa Paulussen will do the content training for larger organizations, large size, giving you the fine detailed tricks there. Knowing Carl, he will focus also on marketing and give you a new, good, also more communication thing there. I will be I assisted Erico last year on deploying Plone deployment. I will lead that one this year with my other colleague, Jonas Pieterek. What did I forget? Because otherwise I'm halfway now, so and then I start falling out people. But like I said,
we talked about Aurora. If you got hooked about that, there's a training by Piero Nicoli and Victor Fernandez de Alba about Aurora fundamentals.
Yeah.
There is a training by Dante, who's the mastermind behind the block model 3 that we've already mentioned. Dante Alvarez and Tisha Sumia are going to give the customizing the Volto Light theme training. There is a training about the Blicca JavaScript stack, for example, the new PAT file manager, how patterns basically work by Peter Mattis and Johannes Ragam, which is like the core team with together with Mike Destappen, who are doing front-end development for Classic. I'm not doing that much, so I'm not going to name myself there.
Again.
Yeah. And I think that's mostly it. So a ton
Yeah,
of
I think-
trainings. Then there's going to be 3 days of talks, like Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday are going to be talks. Thursday, always a huge party, which is mandatory to attend. And Saturday and Sunday, there's going to be a sprint. And Sunday, it's basically petering out, and people are starting to leave at the second day of the sprints.
Yes.
So
So interesting. Again, it's geographically in the heart of Europe, but like you mentioned, it's interesting. It's in the southern point of the Netherlands, where indeed the train connections are more like north-south oriented than. And there's an east-west one, but that's like a city below there, Aachen, I think. And you have the European. So yes, I think my colleagues from Bonn, from our main office, are faster in Maastricht than I am by train in the Netherlands, because I have to kind of make a U-turn with all those nice rivers in the Netherlands. So, but then Maastricht. But I, as a Dutch native, I can certainly attest. Maastricht is wonderful. It's a brilliant, nice location there. Actually, it's the one of those few parts in the Netherlands where it starts to get a little bit hilly. I mean, for the rest, we're flatland. Reference to some very obscure novel from 150 years ago, where everything is in 2D. No, the rest of the Netherlands is 2D, flatland. But if you go then in this direction, then it gets hilly. It gets a bit of southern England atmosphere. We have this famous orchestra conductor with a violin that claims the central square of Maastricht every summer with huge famous concerts, classical mix-over concerts, which is also one of Maastricht's things. I'm really looking forward to it. Like you said, we have 2 days of trainings, 3 days of conference, with also some emphasis this year on a special business track.
And there's going to be a German track and there's a French track. So there's no Plone Tagung this year. There's no German-speaking Plone conference. But since it's actually on the border to Germany and very close, well connected, that's going to be your German conference as well. And the same goes for French. There's going to be a French and German tracks, and they're allowed. You can submit talks in that language, these languages. Go there.
Looking forward to it. It will be interesting. We will only be talking about AI probably.
If you want to see
just like we
and the Netherlands in 3D, go there. Otherwise, it's going to be 2D only, like here.
Yeah.
All flat.
Well,
talking about the future, we have to also look back just quickly and mention that there's a ton of things happened. There was a sprint in South Africa, the Stellenbosch sprint in January. A strategic sprint focusing on market. Let's not go into results. We could talk for a week there. Probably you were there. I was not.
I was there.
We're not going to go there.
Yeah.
So then there was a sprint in Bucharest with a ton of people. Actually, I was not there as well. Then there was Plone Day with very nice videos. There's a hilarious video by the Belgium developers. You have to see that. We're going to link to that in the show notes. If you haven't seen that, it's so funny. There was the Beethoven sprint in Bonn. There was we met there. It was focusing on Volto, but not only. I worked on Cookieplone, I think. Can't remember.
I worked on 10. I worked on 10 different things as well there.
And I was ill again. As usual at sprints. Then there was Buschenschank sprint, which is in Styria in Austria, focusing mostly on Classic or Blicca. We renamed Classic to Blicca at that sprint while emptying a fridge full of white wine. Not because this was like just a temporary coincidence. Then there was a pole position sprint in Cologne. And I guess that is it. And there's like a monthly tune-up days and stuff happening. Let's not go into the results.
Summarizing, Philip. We had like in half a year we had the sprints that we normally had in a year, and I was
bustling.
entitled to visit almost all of them, but I didn't participate this time in World Plone Day because indeed I visited all the other ones. And working from home, then if you have this sprint, this beautiful option for me to get out. And also Stellenbosch, South Africa. I had never been to Africa. It is one of those amazing journeys that you can make where you combine work and leisure, or also get inspiration again. Like I said, let's not go into the details, but it was for me life changing is a bit too much, but the level below that, it was certainly a huge inspiration to be able to travel to that continent. Just like 2024 was for me the first visit to South America. This is one of those great things that we should also talk more again in next episodes. So yes, like I said, not now.
There is that a ton of things are happening in Plone, and stuff is moving. People are busy. Plone is far from inactive, and there's always also new people at sprints. There's like people you've known for more than 20 years now, but there's also always you meet new people who just came into Plone from either the back end or the front end, or just I got hired and my boss told me to come here and see what's going on. Always amazing.
Or you've worked with people for 5 years online, and then you finally meet them in real life.
Oh, you exist in 3D. That's always interesting. Before we wrap it up, we'll go to our most favorite. No, that's probably not true.
Saving the best for the last.
At last but not least, we're going to show off some add-ons. No, just one. Usually we pick a couple, but this time we only pick one. I'm gonna quickly share my screen and demo a new form tool for the Volto front end with you.
Yeah. Well, it's the culmination and the evolution there, but then we'd have to explain another 20 minutes. So let's do that right now.
Exactly.
But it's on the shoulders of giant former implementations.
So there is a new form block. It's built on top of other things, and it is like the new form library. If you use Volto, that's what you should use to create your forms through the web. Here's one example. This is a page with a form. You have select fields. This is German, and you can do stuff. And you have like required fields and date fields and multi-select fields and whatnot. You can do all the things that you expect, and you can validate them. Here, there's a validation error because I have to pick something here, and I decided not to pick something. So this is really nice. And the interesting thing about that, and that's why there's like ton of things that are interesting about it. One is that finally you have something that is feature complete enough to work on a Volto side without any major, this is missing and this is missing and this is missing, because you have validation and stuff, and you can store data and export the data and stuff like that. This is number one. Number two is, again, going back in history, we had Plone Form Gen in Classic, and then a rewrite or a different package called
Collective EasyForm.
EasyForm. And what EasyForm did different is EasyForm reused the dexterity schema editor, where you can create your content types for creating forms. And the form block does exactly the same, because here, this is the schema editor for dexterity content types, and you can add new fields. You have this a pop-up where you select the field type, and then after that you can specify whatever is the settings for this field, and in the form block you add a new field. Let me add a new field here, and you have the same add-on, the same pop-up, and you have the same feature. So we're reusing the component that is being written for the dexterity schema editor in the form editor, which is a no-brainer actually, but the previous implementation did not do that.
Are you sure that so because this is now the kind of more feature complete, as you say. We
Yes.
started with Plone Forms, and then we had Easy Form adding a lot of features, but then you have to look at the time frame. This was like an evolution of 10 to 15 years at least. Then we had Volto with we need a new. So we had a Volto front end forms library, which worked quite well, but was indeed a kind of 1.0 or 2.0 in if you look at the features. Then I know a little bit of why we got to this new part, because the front-end Volto form block was kind of revamped in this latest version, because a number of users looked back and said, hey, but we're missing this from Easy Form. We really would like to have this from Plone Form Gen. And this is how the front end. And you see also the second part here is that some of those more advanced features that are coordinated and running on the back end, like sending emails to secondary, doing more validation.
Email sending.
Indeed. And those things were
there's like different templates for the emails. You can register them in the registry, and
so all those features were also added to the backend, and you have this now combined release now with collective Volto form support in the next version, and this new forms block. I think we still need to do a little bit of marketing and communication.
And it's still Alpha 3.
And it's still an alpha here. And again, here, I do want to plug my colleague Erico a little bit, because there were some features. The front end was kind of, the whole new front end revamp was finished around January, February. And then we realized that parts of the back end were not there and actually were still breaking. And Erico did a lot of work that also for some of his own endeavors in Brazil, but also for a few of our customers and for others, where this is now kind of also the back end and the front end. We need to clean it up a little bit, but we are getting really feature complete now to what we had in Collective Easy Form and now for Volto. Not that the first version, the last 2-3 years, was not working, but you cannot compare 2 or 3 years of effort to 15 years of collecting features and improving things for our previous forms implementation.
Exactly.
Really, because this is one of those forms is the first third party or community add-on or thing where the core developer team has been afraid to move it into core because of all the technicalities there. So it has always remained a kind of first add-on that you install, and we have a very feature complete new version now.
And EasyForm had a plugin ecosystem where you extend EasyForm with new features. There's, for example, a feature to extend events, so you can sign in to an event and say, I want to take part in. If the event has a waiting list, if there's more than the registered number of maximum attendees, and it's automated, stuff like that. And at some point, hopefully, we'll see the same.
Can you zoom in, Philip, before you go away? Can you zoom in a little bit now and look at this? Because there's something else here that we should go into next TPNs.
Maybe it's the same. And the third thing I want to mention here is that the user, the repository contains the backend and the front end code.
Thank you. We did not plan this. We did not discuss this at all before. This is exactly my point.
That's exactly the setup that we use for a Plone installation. So there's a front end which has the Volto form block thing, which is also on NPM, which is this here, and we have the back end which has the Python package with the PyProject TOML, which is this package here. So we have two different release platforms, obviously one for Python, one for JavaScript, and they are the data is fed to that from the same repository. And there's like, when you, for example, when you use a checkout of that in the backend or the front end, that would create a problem. So you have to specify this subfolder. There's a feature in Mixdev, sorry, or in PyProject TOML where you can specify the subfolder that should be used for that. Otherwise, you're gonna get the whole thing, and Python would not know what to do about that. Same with JavaScript. You can specify the subfolder for that. So we're eating our own dog food here, which is
yes,
great.
but this is also something we could do at least 1 or 2 hour discussions here, Philip, because this goes down. So the whole concept here is monorepo, which has indeed been for the project, but now we have it on the also available on the add-on level. There's a third level here, which is like a library kind of, or more bigger thing. So, for example, Volto Lighting has the same issue with a front end and a back end, but then again, Volto Lighting has another bigger issue where it has to be running and working on multiple versions of the back end and the front end in general of Plone, so Volto and Plone backend, where you need to check this. And all this stuff, again, is in Cookieplone. If you want to start a new add-on and you want to use this monorepo setup, the template, the scaffolding for this is in Cookieplone 2.x now in the latest and greatest versions, where it sets this up for you beforehand so that you have everything in one repo. Because again, going back to Volto, we had like Volto form block as the front end, and we have collective Volto form support as the back end for one feature, for one Plone add-on, which you want to plug in, spread over 2 repositories with different versioning, where you can only solve this by reading the documentation and pointing out for this version of you need this of the backend, etc., etc. And if you now click on what you already opened, repository TOML, this is the kind of index where there's also some tooling around here again being developed that we can talk about later, called RepoPlone, that reads this stuff and that points out abstracted, hey, if any other tooling if you want to automate anything about releasing this at the same time, then this is the kind of main index where you can see, oh, but this is how the add-on is called, this is how the for the front end is called, this is how the backend add-on is called, this is how we do the versioning, this is how we do the news and change log things, which is also kind of an issue if you start putting things in monorepos. Again, 2 or 3 TPNs we can talk about this.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
It is. I'm excited that we not only have a form add-on for Volto that is near feature complete, probably some bugs still left to do, and there are open tasks, but it's also a really nice example for how to set up a back-end and front-end project. And Enrico, again, he developed RepoPlone and came up with the repository TOML setup. So yeah, thanks, Enrico, and everyone else who worked on that. And
yeah,
on
because
the
this is the thing.
It's we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and even he does that.
Yeah, and even I also have to say, even if I know because I know him quite well, because I'm working a lot with him together as a colleague, he's pushing these things to the final stage and then releasing and doing a lot of work there. But he's assisted with a lot of other people who validate his stuff, who test things. Like I said, the sub-templating things for Cookieplone were tested by multiple people and even developed and battle tested. The whole CI/CD UVX improvements, the CI/CD team in the community, the people there have been assisting here a lot. But indeed, Enrico has been the one this last 6 to 12 months who has been pushing a lot of these things to the final stages and to use them as kind of examples and possibly best practices on how to use modern Python and JavaScript development, and also the whole handling of the tooling around it, the ecosystem, the monorepos, having consistent releases. There's a ton of and we can go there, a ton of improvements in the whole GitHub actions, which are also scaffolded in here. There's GitLab support now in Cookieplone. I think we have also GitLab major support now. Yeah, we could go on for hours.
Let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
Let's wrap it up. We hope to see you in Maastricht. And if you tune in for the next episode, which is not scheduled, but we'll hope to do one this year, I guess that we're going to talk about the discussions and about AI at the conference and the conference itself. I just had one brilliant idea and I already forgot it. So that's what happens when you get older.
Summertime.
Yeah, summertime. So we're gonna talk about. Oh yeah, that was it. There's gonna be a new Plone.org, and we're certainly gonna talk about that at the next episode. I guess if it's finished, I hope it will be.
Also, if it's not finished, we can talk about that. Yeah, so many subjects there. Philip, indeed, we have to prepare some trainings. So yeah, September, I'm not no promises on a TPN from now until the conf, but maybe we can slip in one. But tons of subjects to discuss and a lot of improvements as usual. Like you said, we are active in the community. The TPN for us is a way to comment on the community. But if we're not commenting for a year, that does not mean nothing happens. On the contrary.
Exactly. Okay. Thanks for bearing with us for 1.5 hours. I'm sorry for taking so long this time. Again, hope to see you in Maastricht. Hope to see you soon. Hope to see you at the next episode. Bye, Fred, and thank you.
Thanks, Philip. See you around.
Bye.
Bye-bye.